Me, Cubans are the whitest of all Hispanics.
A question: knowing that you are a white Mexican girl, do you call yourself Latina too? Because only mixed people and indigenous call themselves Latinas, Latinos. So this might have something to do just by the people that you hang around with and things, because I have never heard only mixed people or indigenous people call themselves Latinas or Latinos. But again, we all have different circles, and what people choose to identify as or how they choose to express their ethnic identity, especially if they are mixed, I can't tell them whether that's right or wrong. I can only speak for myself on that. So I do personally say that I am Latina, or if someone says like, what are you? Because I do get that question a lot, especially when people hear me speaking Spanish. I will say, well, I was born in New Mexico, but then they're like, still doesn't fit. And then I said, okay, well, I'm Mexican, and that's just how we go from there. I say I'm Latina, and I'm proud to be Latina. And especially comes up when I'm going to like my performances. I do Mexican folklorico. Haven't been to class in a really long time because there's been a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, but that's a whole other topic. I miss it, but that's been a wonderful way to keep a connection with my culture. And I will get people quite often being like, pero, ¿de dónde eres? And that's kind of the polite way of them just saying, well, where are you from? Instead of saying, ¿qué eres? What are you? But a lot of people still ask both. I'm Latina. I'm Mexican.
I have a serious question for you guys. Do most Latinos identify as being white? Because me personally, I don't. And I've seen comments being like, you're just another white girl. But I'm not. I don't identify as a white person. I don't relate. I don't feel like a white person. Not that there's anything wrong with being white. But I personally am not white. I am Latina. So now I'm just like, is it just me? I don't think it's just me, because I know a lot of Latinos struggle with, when you're filling out forms in the UK and you have white, black, Asian, and no boxes for Latinos. Like, what box are we supposed to press? We're just supposed to be other all the time, literally just other. And like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you guys are white, but we're not really white, because if you do your research, a lot of Latinos are Afro-Latinos, or we have a lot of indigenous people. So, no estoy diciendo que absolutamente nada mal con ser blanco, whatever. I'm just saying, me personally, if you were to ask me, I'm not white. I don't identify as white. So I think we need some more education.
I just noticed there was so much misinformation and hate and just negativity being said about Cuban people. So I figured I would come on here and just inform you guys about the truth and just facts about what is really going on in Cuba and with all these reforms. So I want to start off by saying that nobody is denying the fact that Cuba has had reforms and acts passed that allow us to get to the United States a lot quicker. I totally agree, we do. Now, what wasn't mentioned in that video about the reason why we have these acts and these reforms is the fact that we are the only country in Latin America that is communist. We have been under a dictatorship for 62 years. So, with us being in a communist country, that means that political opposition is completely prohibited. There is no freedom of speech. We also ration our foods. A lot of the times there is no food. There is no clean water. We have free healthcare. Great. It's not good healthcare. We have no medicine. We don't have basic essential medical equipment, or even things like Band-Aids, needles, you name it, we probably don't have it. And yes, the Biden administration did extend Venezuela's reform to cover Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti. So it's not just us having this easy access. Now, like I mentioned before, the reason why we have this easy access is because our circumstances are completely different than other countries in Latin America. So whenever you speak about this easy process, there's a reason behind it. It's not just because the US decided to be nice and give us an easy access. And I want to repeat one of the things that you mentioned in your video, and that is with our current reform, yes, we are able to have people from Cuba come over to the United States by plane. But keep in mind, once again, this is only if they have a clean background check, no criminal history, and the same goes for their sponsor. They cannot have any issues in their background. They also check your income, your work status, There's a lot of investigating that goes into it. They are not just simply allowing anyone to come to the United States just because they're Cuban. Lastly, I want to say that as a Latina, it's embarrassing to see a video like this come up about someone being so bitter about the opportunities that a different group would receive.
Okay, this is a question for my Hispanic community and the Latino community in general, okay? So growing up in Houston, Texas, I was always surrounded by a lot of Mexican people. And I always thought it made sense that they called themselves brown because A, like they looked like me. Like a lot of times Hispanic people and South Asian people look the exact same in different fonts, like I swear, okay? But also growing up, my best friends have always been usually Mexican women. Like my best friend, Brianna, we got along so well because there was so much similarity between the way Mexican culture is and Bengali culture is. Brianna was one of my only other friends with kind of stricter parents or like kind of had gender roles in her household. She was one of my only other friends that lived a multi-generational home like I did. And Brianna was what they would call morena. So she had my colored skin, maybe even darker than me, and like black hair and stuff, and darker, more indigenous features. So to me, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you're brown. You're like me, yeah. But then once I started getting to high school and college, I kept meeting Hispanic and Latino people that were white, like blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and they would also call themselves brown because they were Hispanic. And I would sometimes get really angry about that because I'm like, you can't call yourself brown. Like, you don't go through the same stuff actual brown people go through. If you present as white, you just don't. People don't look at you in a store and think you're gonna steal something. Or people don't constantly openly comment on your skin color or think things about you by looking at you. They don't have any preconceived notions about you by looking at you the same way they would about a more brown Hispanic person or a like person with brown skin, like a South Asian like me. So I always got kind of confused by them claiming the word brown. I just wanted to know your guys' take on it. I of course know nationality, ethnicity, and stuff have a lot to do with race. But in America, the way you're treated is highly tied to as what race you present. And it's interesting to see these people call themselves brown, especially since they have almost, like most of them have almost 100% European ancestry because like all of their ancestors were from Europe and then just like came to Mexico to do stuff. So I just wanted to hear from the Latino community, Hispanic community about what the rules are about calling yourself brown and if you have to go through the same struggles as other people in like the Latino community have to go through to call yourself brown or not. Just wondering.
Hello tribe, welcome to this particular show here. I go by Sherlock in case it is your first time. Now, this is the tea, and this is what exactly we're going to be looking at. The lighter, the better. Now, in many Latin American countries, racial identity is not strictly, binary, that is black or white, but exists on, a spectrum where lighter skin is always preferable. And this is very evident in beauty standards, in employment opportunities, and also in marriage and relationships. I also do stand corrected. Do let me know that under the comment section if that is true. But then we're going to listen from different people who are making different allegations, controversial statements, and of course over the same. Do we term Latinos or the Hispanics as which category? Are they blacks, Afro Latinos? Are they Africans or Afro-Latinos to that particular, extent. But again, hang around because you're going to find it out. Me and you are going to find it out towards the end of this particular show, of course. And at the end of it, I'm going to circle back with more sentiments in deep, insightful, critical analysis of what they say. But again, along the line, if you have stepped on your toes, don't hesitate to do, dropping us your comments on the comment section of what exactly you think. Let's keep on watching.
If you didn't know that 40% of the Latin American population is white, you've got to watch this video. Check out this Wikipedia article, White Latin Americans. You can see 40% of Latin American population is white. And You know, a lot of people don't know this in the United States, and I just think it's a really interesting fact. Here's the split by country. Brazil has by far the most. They have up to like 40% of the population is white. Mexico has somewhere between 18 and 59 million. It's a huge range there because there's not a lot of great data. But you could even take the smallest number, 18 million, and it's still third highest of all countries. Argentina, 38 million. Obviously, majority white. It's like 87% plus white in Argentina. In the United States, there's a lot of assumptions about what someone from Latin America looks like. And, you know, the reality is that most of that assumption is wrong. The reality is it's mixed. There's a lot of people that are white. There's a lot of people that are brown. And a variety of cultures and people from all over the world are in Latin America. And that is the reality. So anyway, that may make you think twice next time you look at somebody and you're like, oh, they must be from such and such a place. Well, maybe not. Anyway, what do you guys think about this?
I lived in Miami for almost a year, and while I was there, in the apartment building that I was living in Pembroke Pines, there were some Mexican guys doing some repairs on the roof. They saw me pass by walking my dog, and they say, beautiful, morena. And I was like, oh, thank you. And they say, where are you from? And I say, Cuba. They say, Cuba? We didn't know people in Cuba look like you. And I said, like me, like what? Black? And he just stopped on his tracks and changed the subject. Majority of Latino people are very racist. I didn't know that I was living in a very racist country until I met my Jamaican husband, and he made me realize how racist people in Cuba were. And once your eyes are open to this, you cannot unsee it. There was a time in Jamaica when you could watch Spanish television. We had two TV stations, Univision and Telemundo. These TV stations, each of them had one black anchor. One had one female for the news, and the other one had a male, two black people. Both TV stations show a wide array of telenovelas, which is basically Spanish soap operas. And these telenovelas were made and produced in Latin America. Brazil, Colombia, Mexico are one of the biggest places where soap operas are made. Now you tell me now how a Colombian telenovela of 350 episodes don't have one black person in it. If you see a black actor on a telenovela, is actually playing a slave or a character that they are trying to bring back to life, like Celia Cruz. So these have just added to that white supremacy and had made people from other places believe that black people doesn't exist in Latin America any at all. So if as a Jamaican, you travel to Miami and you suffer what he did, don't be surprised. I'm sorry this happens to you, but it's a sad truth. Hopefully this will change soon in the future. Thanks for watching. Mucha love.
Hi, my name is Dr. Cruz. I'm a media studies professor whose research focuses primarily on matters of race. And I received the following question on Instagram about whether or not people in the Latinx community can be considered people of color. The message reads, Dr. Cruz, my wife, who is Chinese American, and I, who am Mexican American, have been having heated arguments regarding whether I can call myself a person of color. Could you please address how the Latinx community can claim both white and non-white monikers and why this is triggering to other peoples of color? Thank you very much. I'm absolutely happy to answer this question. But first, a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, Latinidad is a complicated subject matter, and I am talking from a perspective of someone who is Latino and also has read scholarship on this issue. That being said, reasonable minds may disagree with what I'm about to say. And number two, I'm not in the business of settling marital disputes, so just understand I'm operating as an educator and not picking a side, all right? So the first thing to consider is, what is the function of a phrase like Latin American and all of its variations like Latino and Latine and all the others, right? The first function of these terms is a matter of pragmatics and geography. They refer to those who have origins within Latin America, that is to say from Mexico down to Chile, as well as the islands associated with the American landmass. These terms also serve an ideological function, as the phrase Latin American has its roots in the second invasion of Mexico by France in the 1860s. At that time, Napoleon III created propaganda that argued that the Mexicans were the Latins of America, just as the French were the Latins of Europe, so don't resist. And now, about a century and a half later, these terms are used to refer to the populations of about 2/3 of the American landmass, and it creates this sort of homogenous, monocultural perception of Latin America. And as a side note, this actually kind of gets to why I don't particularly care for these terms. It's not just the Eurocentrism, it's also the perception of a monolithic culture. However, I also recognize that these terms can be used to identify those that have had particular colonial experiences with particular countries, and I think there's value in that. But what does this have to do with Latinas identifying as people of color or white, especially in the eyes of other POC? Well, because these terms are used so broadly to encompass so many different peoples, they include white and non-white folks. These terms aren't meant to be racial identifiers. They are, I would argue, barely functional as ethnic group identifiers. You have people of European descent who've been in Latin America for generations. They're Latine. You have people that are Afro-Latine who have roots in the transatlantic slave trade. You have indigenous Latine who have been detribalized, not to be confused with the indigenous peoples of Latin America who have resisted a Latinidad identity and have preserved their own sense of indigeneity. What further complicates this is that you have people who grow up in Latin American countries that are part of the dominant racial caste who may consider themselves some form of white, who then find out that they're not white by the standards of another country, like if they come to the United States and they're regarded as non-white. So, for example, I know a professor who's from Colombia and is a part of the dominant racial caste there, and she likes to say that she thanks the devil for bringing her to the United States so that she could understand the racism that happens in her own country. So what this means is that being Latin American in and of itself doesn't make you white or non-white. In fact, if you understand whiteness as affiliation with a dominant racial caste, depending on where you are, you could be either. We also have to allow for the fact that people are perceived differently. Where I'm from, there are no white people who look like me. And so part of my self-concept is that of a person of color because that's the experience that I've had. And yet you looking at the screen may see me and think, that's just another white guy with a tan. And further complicating that is that if I embrace my Latinidad by doing things like wearing cowboy boots to work, then my non-white status may become a little more clear. So I guess I'll conclude by saying this. Latinidad is a complicated thing that changes and means different things depending on your context. And you should always be mindful of your proximity to whiteness, whether that's in your own self-concept or in the eyes of other people.
Mr. Malcolm, with all due respect, sir, there's a big difference between race and ethnicity. Because in an application, when it says, what race are you? It's referring to my skin color, not my nationality. I am a Hispanic, that's my ethnicity, but I am white. Not pretending to be white American, I am white, my skin color. I'm not black. If an application says, what's your ethnicity? I'm Hispanic. There's two different things. Yes, Latinos will put white in an application. The skin color is white. I know you don't know this, but in Latin America, we have black and we also have white Hispanics. I happen to be white. When you see a Hispanic person check the box that says white, it doesn't mean we're trying to be white Americans. It just means that our skin color is white. I am a Latina, I'm white, but my heritage is Latina, Hispanic. I hope this helps.
Okay, so there's a lot of discourse right now around Latino content creators, Latino influencers that are choosing to stay silent during this time as our community is being targeted, as our community is being attacked. And I have to be honest and say that I am not surprised. And I'm not surprised for multiple reasons, which I want to go ahead and share with you. Leading up to November and what happened, I saw a lot of Latinos pop up and support him. A lot of Latinos say things like, well, my family came here legally, so everyone else should. I saw a lot of Latinos say things like, well, they're only targeting the criminals. When now you're hearing about reports of multiple people being rounded up or at least questioned that are not even criminals. You can look that up for yourself. I also heard of a lot of Latinos, frankly, just outright saying things like, it doesn't matter. That it doesn't matter to them because it's not impacting them. And that, y'all, is rooted in privilege. The ability to not care, or the choice, frankly, to not care about another group, especially of a marginalized group that is hurting, the ability to not care because it doesn't impact you, the ability to not care how the results went because it doesn't impact you, or you think it doesn't impact you, because we'll get there. There's privilege there. But what I also want to go ahead and mention, why I'm also not surprised that things went in this direction and now we find ourselves here. And now Latinos are like, oh my gosh, what? I didn't think that this would happen. Girl, bye. Like, we knew, and we tried to warn you, but here we are. Latinos, we have an anti-blackness issue in our community. I grew up with it. I grew up with family members who were not friendly towards black people or said things around darkness or blackness. There's machismo in our community that is still very rampant. This need to dominate over women. So machismo, racism, the disinformation and misinformation that is an issue in our community. So all of that together, I knew, and I said this months ago, that it would lead to, or it could lead to, people not voting for her. And here we freaking are, okay? So I'm not surprised. And also, internalized racism, the proximity or the need to feel like you want to be white, even though you will never be white. Never. It won't be a thing. All that comes together, and you have what we're going through now. So I'm not surprised. But if you do want to have conversations about this type of stuff, follow for more, because I'm down to talk.
So in case you didn't know, I graduated from college a little while ago. And what that means is all the chisme that happened in the last 4 years, I get to tell all you guys because now I'm free. And a lot of you keep asking me, what college do you go to? I protect the privacy of the people involved in the chisme. So stop asking me what college I went to. So for day 2 of the chisme, I'm going to tell you about a situation that happened with the office in charge of like Latino affairs at my university, right? And it's going to mention other situations that I'm not going to talk about until tomorrow in the next couple days. So the office in charge of like basically like making sure that Latino students are good at my university, right? This year had an amazing administration. Amazing. True. Last year, desastre. Allegedly. And it wasn't the person like actually in charge because that specific dean, love her. She's a queen. Love her. It was the person directly working with the students. I'm going to call her Evie. I don't know. I saw a Pokemon thing, right? So Evie calls me into her office, right? Allegedly. Alongside 2 of my closest friends. One of them is a brown Salvadoran and one of them is a brown Honduran, which is important for later, right? So we were having a conversation with Evie, right? But she was also mentioning a 4th person who wasn't able to go that day, who's a black Panamanian, dark-skinned Panamanian, which is important, right? So then we're basically having a conversation and she's just like, yeah, I called you guys in today because there's been like some concerns about like your guys' behavior recently. And then we were just like, okay, so what happened? And they're like, oh, some people just don't feel comfortable, like, you know, being themselves around you. And like, they feel like they have to walk on like thin ice around you because they're scared of like saying something wrong. And I was just like, girl, spit it out. What are you trying to say? And I was just like, and I said like names. I was like, are you talking about this person, this person, this person?
You know who
and
you
like
are.
her eye twitched. And she was just like, well, I don't want to say names. And I was like, well, you don't have to. You didn't have to. And then she was just like, I don't know. She's just like, I just feel like, oh, it's important to know Evie is a white, I think she's white Panamanian.
Allegedly.
I think,
She
yeah,
could be
white
Puerto
Panamanian,
Rican.
right? So she was just like, I think it's important that like we don't make this a fight between the white Latinos and the Latinos of color because that's what it's looking like recently.
She allegedly said.
I looked at her and I said, Evie, you don't think that's a problem? If it's white Latinos versus Latinos of color, you don't think that's a problem? And I kid you not, Evie goes, well, I just feel like you guys don't really understand defending the white Latinos. And I look at her, I say, Evie, what makes you think, I was like, we are the same skin color. What makes you white and not me? And this is not me calling myself white. So please don't start like a race identifying war in the comments because I know how you guys are. Just listen to the fucking cheese.
Like I'm begging.
And she goes, what? And I was just like, yeah, girl. I was just like, you're calling us Latinos of color. I was like, for what? Defending. And she listed off the stuff. She was mad. Well, she wasn't really mad. The white Latinos at our school were mad because we didn't let colorism, racism, homophobia, classism, all the isms slide. What? Mind you, these same white Latinos who went to go tattletale on administration because they were also scared of the Latinos of color were the same people making fun of indigenous food. Allegedly. Saying homophobic jokes. Allegedly. Making jokes about their skin color, about being lighter than everyone else. Allegedly. But apparently we're the bad guys? Keep in mind the main group of people she wanted to talk to were the presidents of something we call Latinidad, which is the leftist Latino organization, the Central American organization, and the Afro-Latino organization. 3 organizations that came out of the overall umbrella organization, not catering to the issues of Central Americans, Black Latinos, and political issues. Allegedly. Are you insane?
She was.
And she was just like, yeah, I just want to avoid the drama. The drama in question being them beefing with anyone darker than them. Allegedly. Anyone darker than this. Because if you looked at that friend group, every single person looked like they could be on a telenovela from Univision, if you know what I'm saying. True. So what did I do? I let it go because I'm a bigger person. Just kidding. I did some investigation and I found out that she was besties with the same people making those anti-indigenous, anti-black, colorist, allegedly, classist jokes and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh, that's why she's defending them. So what did I do? I contacted her superior. This is literally me writing the email. Excuse me, ma'am, but next time we have a conversation facilitated by someone about racism, colorism, etc., classism, maybe it shouldn't be by a white Latina who grew up upper middle class and is basically trying to get us to shut up. Mind you, her bestie that told her we were bullying her for calling out her anti-indigenous marks tried to tattletale on me to the Native American Student Union. Allegedly. Saying he's being mean. You talked about indigenous food. What did you think they were going to do? They did nothing to me. But I'll tell that chisme another day. Also, by the way, the administration that they currently have now in place, chef's kiss. They're amazing and they're so supportive. They even defended us when the administration basically allegedly us. But that's a chisme again for another day. So yeah, that's what it's like going to a PWI, even with a lot of Latinos. But, you know, tune in tomorrow for day 3 of the chisme. Hopefully, I don't get sued before I finish the series.
Hello, tribe. I told you that I'll circle back towards the end of this breakfast show, and here I am. Now, I'm going to read something shortly. The preference for whiteness, that is, among many Latinos is not simply an individual's choice, but a deeply ingrained, societal bias and reinforced over generations. Colonial legacies, media representations, economic advantages, and of course, racial discrimination. All these contribute to the perception that whiteness is aspirational. Inspirational. While blackness, that is, indigenous identity and Asian heritage, are something to be avoided or downplayed. Now, while there is a growing movement to reclaim Afro-Latino and indigenous identities, the preference, for whiteness remains deeply embedded in Latin American structure. No. That is, the structure is the culture itself. And then, of course, overcoming this will require a fundamental shift in societal values, that is, media representation and historical narratives that challenge the centuries old belief that whiteness is superior. Something that not everybody is ready to, go by with. I go by Sherlock again, and give me that particular thumbs up there, tribe. And don't, of course, forget to, leave us a tiny little comment in the comment section of what exactly you think of this video and, by large, the topic. See you in the next.